Well, it looks like we have a full house tonight, so I'll go ahead and get started. Hi, everyone. My name is Tip Ho, and I am the Executive Director of Foundation Beyond Belief. I want to welcome you to our monthly Fireside. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Tonight, we have a special guest, Nadia Dutchin, the Executive Director of American Humanist Association. American Humanist Association is one of FBB's partners in our Humanist Disaster Recovery program. And I'm really excited to introduce Nadia. Nadia herself comes from a climate justice background, and she especially has tried to center Black, Indigenous, and people of color in that, where, those are the communities that definitely get affected most heavily by climate disasters. Nadia also brings 10 years of experience in community engagement, strategic partnership, and youth development. So I'm very excited to have her on here tonight. And without ado, I'll just hand the floor over to her.
Thank you so much, Tiff. I really appreciate being here this evening. Good evening, all. My name is Nadia Dutchin. I do use she, her pronouns. I live in Baltimore, Maryland, and I'm originally was born and raised in Minneapolis. And I'm really excited. I just joined the AJ on December 1st. And I was brought into the organization to make the movement much more youthful and more diverse. And I think the stage is set beautifully for that to happen within the humanist community and all throughout our partnerships. When Tiff and I spoke last month, was it last month? I think it was last month. The time is just flying by. I did not know that FBB was a project of the AJ at some point in time, and it stepped out on its own. And learning the history of FBB and the relationship it has with AJ, I want the American Humanist Association to be a bigger and better partner to FBB in so many ways. Given the fact that I have a background in climate and environmental justice, and yes, we know that frontline and fence line communities where Black, brown, and poor working people live are the most affected by climate change. And as climate change continues and environmental racism, and climate change continues to get worse and worse, we're going to see more climate disasters within our own country. We already have, climate migration happening within our own borders. Americans who cannot live where they normally live, where they've traditionally lived, where their family land is. Folks are moving because of floods and rising water and wildfires and hurricanes and tornadoes and earthquakes in unsuspecting places. And it's for that reason that I would like to see our partnership with FBB strengthened, and I would like to see more integration with our chapters and our members throughout the country with the work that FBB is doing. It's so important that we, as humanists, we have lots of wonderful ideas about humanism, and I think it's really lovely to have those conversations about our personal enlightenment and how we arrived at this place as humanists, regardless of whether or not we are atheist, agnostic, secular, or religious. Humanism sits at the nexus of so many things. But my brand of humanism is rooted in service. If we are not serving, if we are not in service to people, humans, the people that we value, what are we doing? I think we're doing it wrong if we're not doing that. So I would, the plan is, I believe that we probably can disclose this lightly, is we're going to be working together with FBB quite closely in the next year to maybe do joint campaigns and get our chapters and our members mobilized to help. Because when things hit the fan, because they will, and they will, and they will continue to do so. It makes sense to me that AHA members and chapters are active, helping with helping hands, with resources. So a lot of the work that I have to do in the next year is really going to be a lot of partnership building to get money in the door so that we can, one, help to fund FBB's work a lot better. So that we can help buy supplies and gear and, provide preemptive support for families, particularly with like the wildfires example, for example, do people have go bags? Do they have something that they have, that's waterproof, that can survive a disaster, but has the important things that folks can grab out on the way out the door, on the way to the basement, or wherever they need to go in their homes or outside of their community to be safe. These are things that we're talking about, and I'm thinking about, the partnerships that we can bring on outside of our movement to help facilitate community building and community strengthening. So I would, welcome questions from folks in general about like the direction of the HA or our partnership with FBB. If anyone has questions or has any ideas, I welcome collaboration. So please know that and any idea is a good idea. And I'm looking forward to hearing, folks' input on that. I'll stop there. Tip, are there any questions?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, how's it going?
Okay. Good. Haven't seen you since our last AHA worldview class. So
Indeed.
I have a question because I am a humanist chaplain up here in Canada at a secular university, and we're putting on a program in a couple of weeks as a part of our UN World Interfaith and Harmony Week, which is a worldwide celebration that was started by the Prince in Jordan. And we've been doing this for 7 years. So this year we decided to do something on climate justice. And they've asked me to speak in terms of humanism's contribution. Mm-hmm. So I'm interested in what I've read and what my time involved in humanism. Do you think that we are doing something or have a point of view that is unique compared to, say, maybe some of the other religious systems, some of the other political, social activism? Do you think there's something unique about what we have to offer besides being able to hook up our member groups? Just a stance. I'd like to share that with our university community if we could verbalize it.
I think I'll defer to Tip on that one, since Tip does the work on behalf of humanists and the secular community.
Okay.
So I think that one of the things we really need to focus in on is connecting groups. A lot of groups are doing the same work and they're not able to find resources. They're not able to find partnerships there. And so that's something that we can definitely offer there. Another thing we do bring is a different perspective because we're so diverse in terms of we've got atheists, agnostic, humanists, and really we are coming together with different perspectives in order to bring together or to really pursue this goal. So that is something that we can potentially offer as well. Nadia, do you want to add on to?
Yeah, I think one of the things we in general offer is aid and comfort and friendship with no strings attached. That we're not, peddling religion. And I'm not saying that, churches are, actively saying, here, take this Bible before I give you this bottle of water. I don't think that that's actually the case, at least not in this country. But I think that we build a community and we're there for the right reasons because we believe in the right thing, doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do and not for any other reason. And I think that's the perspective that many of us bring to the table, for any given situation where we're called to serve.
I think that's a good point. No strings attached. I like that.
None whatsoever.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah. I'll quote you.
You may. Thanks for the question, Marty.
Sure.
Oh, and thanks to all the people in the chat who have been defining acronyms. There are a lot of them. Any other questions from folks?
I think Dave has a question.
Yeah, hi. Thanks. This is really refreshing, I have to say, Nadia, to hear. I think that clearly many of us that have been promoting humanism have been frustrated by the lack of movement, if you will, on many of our groups, many of our chapters. Difficult to get folks engaged in some of these really broader issues other than maybe some local, food distribution kinds of efforts. And so one thing I'd like to propose and sort of discuss here and bring into the discussion. I didn't even know about, I think Marty just mentioned his collaboration with the UN group up there in Canada. I didn't know about the United Nations Association organization until just a couple years ago. I find most people actually don't know about it, but I became interested in it when I heard a presentation and realized that the founding document, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which Eleanor Roosevelt helped drive in 1948, really was taken much from the Humanist Manifesto and our Bill of Rights sort of combined. And it very much overlaps humanism's, sort of directions. The 30 rights that are listed, we'll all be in agreement with them. And so it seemed to me that the work, as I started looking at the work that the UN is doing globally, but also now locally in communities around the world, especially with the focus on what they call a sustainable development goals for the world. There's 17 goals for the world. Number 1, to end poverty. Number 2, hunger, quality education for everybody, women's rights, take care of the planet, climate. They pretty much cover the gamut of the main issues. And so it made sense to me to try and become more engaged in that effort. And I became the president of I live in Orange County, California, became the president of the Orange County chapter. And we're actively looking to implement those sustainable goals here in Orange County. And, we've got 34 cities, but we want to get them on board. It's this broad program. I'd love to, sort of bring that into the discussion. Maybe we can have some discussion offline if you're interested. But I really think rather than creating our own wheel, kind of like Tiff says, there's so much opportunity to collaborate with things that are already working and going on. And I just find that a wonderful collaboration for us to already have programs that we can get our members engaged in.
Absolutely. And I would love to have a conversation offline, Dave. And is that Orange County, California or Florida?
Yes, California.
There's a lot of them in the warmer states. And I think you're right. And Tiff and I discussed this a bit, that, there are plenty of organizations that are doing really great work on the ground already. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. What we need to do is build strong partnerships. Exactly. But what we have to do is build a culture of reliability, that when we're called, people can rely on us to show up. And whether that would be physically or financially or with other resources, if it's amplification, that we're doing at least 2 of those 3 things at all times, and that we're at the ready to serve in that way.
Yeah, agreed. And I would just also add that I think it's less important that we sort of identify or make our primary goal to identify as a humanist organization driving the charge versus having our members get engaged with these groups and know that we are seeding humanists throughout these organizations. One great organization is United Way. United Way is the largest fundraiser for businesses throughout America. Their staff alone here in Orange County has 40 paid staff on it. They are huge. They're involved in major homelessness programs, major education improvement programs, et cetera. As I talked to them and their executive board about what we're doing at the UN, they invited me to join their strategic planning team.
That would be great. It would. Oh, you're muted, I think. Oh.
Okay.
There you go.
All right. Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, you continue. You were talking.
No, they invited me to become a part of their planning team, and it's just a great way to actually get engaged at a ground level, on some of these issues.
Absolutely, you're absolutely right. If the work is already there, then we just need to essentially throw down. We need to put our shoes on and go and serve in that way. And I agree with you that while our motto is, good without a God, that's our reasoning. The without a God is our reasoning. Good is what we all need to lean into. And regardless of people's faith perspective, mine is faith in people, faith in goodness and decency. Others, it may be faith in something else. We just need to show up and let our faith serve. And ours is in one another and the goodness that we can bring to the party. So I very much agree with you. It's not about optics, and that's not necessarily. I like the fact that we have in our strategic plan for the American Humanist Association, we have like raised the optics of humanism. But in my opinion, and one of the things that I said when I was interviewing is, if we do the doing part, the optics of humanism will be raised without us trying. And I would like it to be that effortless. I think, we can do some work with saying, hey, we're going to be at the so-and-so, meet us here to do the thing, which we should be doing. We should be doing more, we should be a rallying point in a sense, and, letting people know where they can show up. If they, their schedule frees up and there's a thing happening, it's on our website, it's accessible through a partner. People can find a thing and they can go. But honestly, it should be that easy. We should just be there.
Yeah.
Certainly. Yeah.
One more quick point on this. In my discussion with the United Way person running the homeless program here, we talked about this a little bit, and the Humanist organization, et cetera. Her comment was interesting, and she was, truthfully, when we work with churches, which are great, and they do a lot of good things for us, there's always this sort of other agenda that they have also, though. Mm-hmm. And it's sort of refreshing to work with folks that really just don't have any other agenda other than, helping the cause. So I think we'll find more and more of that out there.
Well, and to that point, I think that one of the interesting things we've been talking about a lot, and it's, unfortunately, it sounds very marketing-ish-y, that, the youngest 40% of our country, of our population, are nuns. They're not religiously affiliated. And it's like a feeding frenzy to get to, these young people. And I don't believe in extractive or exploitative relationship building. That's not why I want them, to join the humanist movement. I think that we're just a great community of wonderful people, and they can, sit without judgment, and if just with us, among us, and find free thinking, smart, kind, funny people. But what I know is that young people, in a sense, the youngest people that I've worked with, view service as their religion. That's why social justice is so important. It's important to make a difference. The time for talk is well been over. And now is the time to do. And how do we demonstrate our value of humanity and, all of these grand ideas about humanism? It's time to put those things into play at this point. And I think we are the place, more so than any other movement around. We are the place. We've, traditionally and historically, humanists have always been at the forefront of social justice issues. And we are at the precipice of we're already further than we need to be with regards to climate mitigation. We're already further past the point of no return. At this point, we simply need to stop what's happening, and we can, hope and work together that the earth will heal itself, and we can find mitigating technology that can help us regenerate the damage that's already been done. But we can't go back at this point, and young people are facing climate anxiety. I mean, to the point of actual real anxiety. Let's not I don't want to belittle that. I worked with them, I organized with them, and they were stressed out for good reason. And I understand that climate justice is a threat multiplier. It makes every undergirding systemic oppression worse. So we're going to see it affect reproductive justice. We're going to see it affect food systems. We're going to have language justice and disability justice, compounded issues. It makes things worse. We've got to stop the bleeding with regard to climate and environmental justice. It's not just, we're not talking about just polar bears and penguins anymore. Unfortunately, we've gotten to the place where we now have to look at the fact that we've let it go so far that it is now affecting people of all, through all of the ranks of society. and we are at a point of no return. We can't just be stagnant. So it's important that we're putting our values to work. There's some questions in the chat. Yes, the website. We're working on that. Thank you for that question, Rita. When I was interviewing, I couldn't find a lot of things on the website either. So, and this was one of them. I couldn't find partners. I couldn't find our strategic plan. There are quite a few things I couldn't find, and that's not an indictment of staff or of what was going, what was happening. Roy left for quite a few months, and staff were really just trying to keep the wheels turning. But we are evaluating our website and all of our entire digital footprint at this point, and we are working on making sure that our partners are accessible and our activities are accessible, not just as a central staff, but throughout the chapters and the members. So if there's a member or an affiliate or a chapter that's doing really, really good work or something, an activity that they just would like to highlight, I'm hoping that we can create like a community calendar where those things are accessible and you can know how to find an activity or find a person to connect to. That was a great statement, Rita. Thank you. Question, do we see a relationship between our AHA advocacy work and hands-on service work, and how do the two fit together? Ooh, that's a good question. I think a lot of our advocacy work is really directed towards First Amendment issues and 14th Amendment issues. And I know that there are people who volunteer for that work. And I've not gotten, so far into like introductions to the vast majority of our work or the people who support our work to really comment on that. So I may have to get back to you on that, Bob. But I think that we could stand to really bolster our volunteer base as the AHA, as the American Humanist Association. We could stand to bulk up our volunteer base and be really prescriptive about training. And I think that's what's going to be really important as we're training people how to advocate and how to lobby, how to protest safely, and organize our volunteers to be like on the Hill or in front of the White House with the lovely signs and songs that we can make. It's going to be important that we're able to, reach people through training. So I think the training aspect is something that's really of great interest to me. And that would be one of the things I would be looking to partner with our partners like FBB and like Black Nonbelievers, the Student Secular Alliance, the other organizations who are within our humanist sphere and, could use that kind of support and training, looking into creating, relationships to train folks to do maybe like train the trainer, but getting more people, more volunteers trained to do more hands-on work. I hope that answered your question. If you have a follow-up, Bob, let me know.
I would just love to add on to that, Nadia. That was a great response. But I know that even though the AHA is really focused on advocacy work, we can build through partnerships, like we've already mentioned several times. One of the great things about the humanist community is that we bring such diversity in strength, in resources and in focus point. For example, FBB is more service-based and AHA is more advocacy-based. We're on the ground. We have our Beyond Belief network teams kind of solving problems and immediate needs. But then the AHA can go and use that advocacy to really get to the root of the issues. Right there. So we kind of need both that immediate and sustainable long-term solution. So I think that's kind of where the connection is, where we're playing to our own strengths and working together to provide a more comprehensive solution to climate disaster and other problems that people are facing. Yeah, it's a great question, Rob. I think Dave also has a question in the chat, Nadia.
Oh, I haven't gotten down that far. Oh.
Sure.
Oh, great. Thank you for that link, Dave. That's appreciated. I don't think that was actually a question. Was it a question, Dave, or just a additive? I'm cutting and pasting the link. I'm taking notes while we're talking, y'all. This is how we do it.
Just going through the chat to see.
Marty asked if FBB responded to a climate disaster yet that can be referenced.
Sure. So FBB has been very involved. Before the pandemic, we would deploy some of our Beyond Belief Network teams, and we've deployed in the US and abroad. Currently, we were more focused on fundraising simply because of the pandemic. We haven't been able to get volunteers out. Recently, we raised money for the Haiti earthquake, last year, the winter storm in Texas, and we also raised money for the tornadoes in Kentucky. So going forward, what we are actually looking to do more of is focus on our Beyond Belief Network teams, because a lot of these Beyond Belief Network teams are situated in areas that are disaster prone. And well, that's everywhere nowadays, but we know that local teams can get supplies quicker. They can respond a lot quicker than deployment. So that's something that Nadia and I have discussed working towards with our program.
And Tiff, maybe I just want to jump in for a second. I wonder if Wendy can hop in for a second and talk a little bit about the winter storm response, because that was such a perfect example of how we want to build the program to be long-term, because we had so many teams that were able to respond directly in that crisis.
Yeah, sure. So, I do. In a lot of ways, you can, if you look, I see that we put a link to our archive of the disasters that we've responded to in the past, and you can see a lot of those have the climate change, have been affected by climate change, and you can see but it's not this direct response to climate change in the way that we're kind of talking about it in this chat. But what was a new avenue that we weren't able to do as well before, when that Texas storm happened, was that we had, just because of the location of that storm, which was, of course, this really storm that we were not ready for. I'm here in Texas, so we were not. I experienced that. We were not ready for it, and it was such a clear climate change event in so many ways. But we had teams all over Texas that were already situated, our Beyond Belief Network teams that were already on the ground in Houston, in Dallas, in Austin, in San Antonio, who were ready to, who already had the connections with the local, the local government, the other nonprofits, with the people on the ground, lots of unhoused people that were needing support during that event in particular. And so they were able to immediately be on the ground while the event was still happening, already responding to folks, already getting people into hotels, already getting food to people, all of those things, because they were there and they were already part of the system. And we were able to raise funds as the national org to funnel into that. So that's what we want to be able to do going forward with Beyond Belief teams in Florida that are going to be responding to, not earthquakes, hopefully not earthquakes in Florida, hurricanes, and in California where they have fires, we want to have teams that are ready to respond when there's a fire, and also be doing, preparation work, doing the work to respond to the climate change needs and in advance of the event as well. So that is just such a great model of what we're wanting to move our disaster and climate change response to, is how we were able to respond in Texas last February.
And just to add on to that, we're also looking towards, Wendy, you touched upon this a little bit, but we're looking more towards being prepared. In the past, we have been primarily focused on response. And sometimes, that's great, but for fundraising, but we know that in the aftermath of a disaster, sometimes it's too late. And we found that out in Texas. We were trying to get food to people, water. Water was huge. And we had a little bit of difficulty, a little bit of a challenge doing so because the disaster had already happened. Roads were blocked off. So being able to really get the teams that are already in place prepared and having them trained in disasters, getting supplies ahead of time, that's something that we would love to add onto our program going forward. And then building out clusters of partnerships as well. There. See that while we were talking, there were quite a few comments in the chat.
We also have one in French from Beb, who's joining us from Casablanca. It reads, I'm delighted to be among you. I'm the founding president of the Association of Migrants and the Poor, AMD, which is based in Morocco and in Casablanca, which fights to help very vulnerable sub-Saharan migrants in critical situations. Delighted to be among you and hoping to have a partnership with you. You can visit our Facebook page or Twitter, which is Association of Migrants and the Poor, on Facebook. And they were saying that they understand English, but it's a little bit difficult. Thank you so much for the comment and for the invitation to partner, Beb. We appreciate that. I think we both can probably do that too. Search them out and reach out at some point in time. Bob has a follow-up. Can you say more about advocacy, about policy issues, the environment, climate crisis, reproductive rights, healthcare, et cetera? Where does that fit into the work at FBB or AHA? Honestly, Bob, I'm still very unfamiliar with a lot of the advocacy work that we do as the American Humanist Association through the Center for Free Thought and Equality. I'm still learning a lot of what's going on. There are a lot of moving parts, and so I'm kind of making my way through the organization and our adjuncts. I do know that we do. Rachel Deitch, who is on staff, does a lot of work on the Hill, and working with, quite a few of the people in the Free Thought Caucus, as does Ron Millar on our staff. We have supported, and we are going to continue to support reproductive justice, where we can, and we advocate. And a lot of that really looks like, for right now, it looks like sign-on letters. It looks like letters to our congresspeople, asking our constituents, our members and our chapters to reach out to their own legislators on behalf of certain issues. I don't necessarily know that we, are generating policy ourselves to move that forward. I think we partner with a lot of other people who do that, and we support their work. That's what it looks like from my very, very small purview. Again, I'm still learning, so I apologize that I can't give you a better answer. If you'll drop your email in the chat, or you can DM me, you can private message me your email, and I can get you some more information to answer that question better. And I apologize for not having the information, but I'm so incredibly new.
Bob, to answer your question in terms of where advocacy fits in for FBB, we are traditionally a service organization. However, in the past, we have supported our partners that are more focused on advocacy, so that, like Nadia says, it looks like signing on to letters to congressmen, focusing more on that. Again, our role has really been more of the support.
Oh, that's a good question from Eddie. Side question. I see several preferred pronouns indicating intersectionality, which specifically elevates group identity over individuality, humanity. Is AHA moving away from humanism and towards social justice warrior framework? I don't really know how to address that in the way that this question is framed. In order for us to be humanists, we are first people. We're people. We're individual people. And in my estimation, in my opinion, as I meet people and I, walk into a place as a person, I expect to be respected, and I expect my dignity to be preserved. And I expect us to offer that to the people that we meet. I don't know about social justice warrior framework, but what I do know is that it doesn't cost anything to be kind to people and to respect their preferences. and to use their preferred name and their preferred pronouns. We can't make assumptions about people, and we should not. That can be really harmful. What I was talking with what I would consider a movement elder a couple of weeks back, and one of the interesting things that we were talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And it always kind of rubs me the wrong way because Maslow, number one, stole the hierarchy of needs, and two, it's not his. It belonged, the original thoughts were rooted in the community building and the community base of Native Indigenous people here in the United States, particularly the Blackfoot tribe. And one of the important things, regardless of which model you look at, is self-actualization. And Gen Z in particular, the youngest of us, who are adults, teenagers and adults, know themselves better than the rest of us have, better than the rest of us had the opportunity to know. I'm a Gen Xer. We couldn't even talk about sexuality. We could not talk about orientation or preference or gender roles or any identity. You know, if your version of womanhood looked like, dressing a little bit more masculine, or, like I own all the tools in my family, for example. That's just what womanhood looked like to me. And that was the way I viewed it. The younger folks do not. And they don't have to. They're happier, they're more settled. They are very peaceful with who they are as people. They have self-actualized already. And it's because they're in that place that I think that we have the ability to have the movement. We can create the humanist movement that we need to carry us forward, because in its existing state, it is going to die. And we can't let that happen. It's stagnant. And so if we are going to bring in young people who have great thoughts and energy and vibrancy and innovative ideas, and the desire and passion to talk about things that are not being talked about, like new economic models, to talk about like cutting edge science and getting excited about those things, this movement is not going to go anywhere. And so like, I very much appreciate the question, Eddie, and I encourage everyone to state their pronouns, so that people can then in turn state their own pronouns, so that we can welcome people on equal footing, and in a place of respect. And I will pause there. If you'd like to follow up, Tip, I have a child hovering here for one moment. Excuse me, y'all.
Sure. Nadia, you gave a great response, so I don't know that there's much I can add to it, but I think social justice and respecting people is not irreconcilable with humanism. In fact, it actually fits into the framework of that. As humanists, we want to respect people. We want to have no judgment. We want people to be able to join us, both in service and just having a community. And so I don't know that, this is called moving away from humanism so much as embracing those values and embracing that respect. But Nadia had a great response to that. So.
And you hit it right on the nose, Tiffany. It is humanism. We cannot neglect the human in humanism. It is not just about, talking about the Enlightenment and the evolution of humanism in the United States, as it is. It is literally about respecting and taking care of people. And one of the things, we can't assume the needs of people. We have to ask, and we have to make it such that people can give us honest answers without and not receive judgment from us. So that is, I agree, that is absolutely, humanism. It is an amplification of what humanism is. It can progress. The movement can progress and change, and it should. I hope that answers your question, Eddie. Gretchen has a question. Ooh. Okay. Additionally, in addition to 100,000 kids awaiting adoption in U.S. foster care, more than 100,000 U.S. kids have become orphaned or lost their primary caregivers to COVID, which disproportionately affects BIPOC communities. I don't know what's begun in this arena, but we should hope to be a resource. Oh, absolutely. I know that we just sent out a sign-on letter so that every needy child who needs a home can find one. And had not actually thought about that very, very sobering number of children without primary caregivers or parents because of COVID. And I think we've seen the stories, and our hearts absolutely shatter when we read, children losing a parent, both parents, or their guardian, or whomever that may have been. We just sent out, a sign-on letter and asked people to reach out to their legislators to pass some legislation to address this. I would love for us to talk a little bit about this. And interestingly enough, the Center of Education sent out a survey earlier in the week. Very impressed with how many people responded. One of the interesting questions that we got about, the question was essentially, what else would you like to learn about? What can we, curate education sessions about? And someone said something about, can we talk about the way that, the humanist response to COVID and how we did or did not show up? And that I thought was a really, really interesting question. It kind of sat me on my heels because I don't know the answer to that. But what I know is that this will continue. Like, COVID is going to become endemic. It will be here for a very, very long time. And we're going to have to live with it. But this will be the first of many that will come, again, because of climate change, because of deforestation, because we are destabilizing our environment, with the, glaciers melting. We don't know what's going to aerosolize when it melts. Things can live in ice forever and ever. In medicine, one of the favorite sayings is, you're not dead until you're warm and dead. We don't know that bacteria or viruses or fungi are dead in ice. We don't know that. Things can survive in extreme conditions. There are bacteria called extremophiles. We don't know what's going to happen. So what we should start thinking about that. And I really, really appreciate that question. I really appreciate your question, with regard to our response to COVID.
Nadia, I think there was a question from Claire.
I don't know that I saw it. Oh, this was Gretchen had a bigger question, and it was bisected. Oh, okay, so the first part of Gretchen's question was, not sure if I should ask here or contribute here, but I built my family via foster and adoption, and the challenges children facing in foster care face I'm sorry, I can't read today. And the challenges children in foster care face are significant, especially as they age up and age out. Absolutely. Foster youth who age out are a majority population in homeless communities, and there are organizations doing outreach, building tiny homes communities for the homeless young adults. Are there activities in the AHA supporting this arena? There are not, but I think we should. And this is emblematic of the many things that are going on that we just don't know about until someone raises the question. So again, thank you so much for both parts of your question, Gretchen. And that doesn't seem like a really hard lift either. Tiny homes, they're efficient, they're inexpensive, they're accessible. I know I've seen there are quite a few communities that are building full tiny home communities just for the general population of homeless folks. The vast majority, as you mentioned, who are, can be young, veterans, those with mental health challenges, LGBTQIA plus folk. There's so many people that experience homelessness from time to time. Those are great questions, and I really thank you for raising them. I'm taking notes while we're talking, so this is something that we can certainly look into. And then Gretchen, if you can send me your information, direct message me your email address, I'd love to talk with you more about that.
Nadia, there was a question from Claire that says, what relationship do you see possible with the atheist community, who often explicitly say these issues aren't atheist issues?
I find that, well, and I find that to be interesting because American atheists are so active in social justice. I find that to be exactly the opposite. I think they're very active. And I think clearly the dividing line is whether or not we believe in God. And I mean, I'm an atheist, so, you know, I'm okay with being clear about that publicly. But again, my brand of humanism is rooted in service, and my brand of atheism is rooted in service. I think that I only have this one life, and I have to make the most of it. How am I serving while I'm here? Who am I helping? How am I raising my child? You've seen her like in the frame and out of the frame, but I raised her in a humanist fashion, and she's very well aware of my stance on religion and atheism. And at 7, we have these talks regularly. She's very well aware. I think that I don't think that the larger atheist community may think that. I think it's a great question, though, and something to be mindful of as we move forward with our partners. But I believe the American atheists are really active in the world. And one second, what?
I have your phone to play what book?
Wait a minute, baby.
But your
Excuse me.
Your tablet's about to die.
Okay, I'm sorry, my tablet's about to die. I apologize, y'all. Child challenges with the technology. But I don't know that I foresee those questions. I actually met with Nick Fish and Debbie Goddard last week. And we were excited to work together. And I mean, work together, not just sit down and have drinks and talk together, but actually do work together. I don't know. I've heard the same question from people who are in AHA, honestly, whether or not, there will be room for, spirited debate and discourse. And I think there has to be room for that. Otherwise, we're not who we are. I mean, we have to examine ourselves and gut check ourselves and where we are in the world and our perspective. And I think that's going to be an ongoing project. I think as individual people and as a movement, we're going to continue to have to do that. But we can walk and chew gum at the same time. I think we can serve and discuss spirituality, religion, the absence of, and double down on things. But I think that we all know that we have to make the world better, and we have to leave it better than we found it. And I think atheists, probably more so than anyone else, embody that. At least that's been my perspective. You have a comment on that, Tiff, by any chance?
Yeah, I agree. And I think there's a small subset of atheists who might say these aren't atheist issues, but by far and large, a lot of atheists are also humanists, and they believe in service. They believe in being there and making the world a better place. I do think that we can be atheists personally while putting our service foot forward and focusing a little bit more on that. Dave said it earlier, we've been in the past leading, Dave mentioned humanists, leading with humanism, but I think atheists also have been leading with atheists. And in order to draw attention to their atheism, I think it would be better really to kind of focus more on the service, because we're already doing great work out there as atheists. Why not continue that work and then get recognized for it, rather than kind of doing it the other way around and leading atheism first, which hasn't really helped us to grow our movement.
Thanks, Tiff. Exactly. Exactly what Tiff said. Thank you for the comment, Bob. Bob says, seems to me ethics are the heart of humanism, and if we're not living our values, then what's the point of our humanism? This is why I applaud the focus and the amplification of the social justice work that AHA has already been engaged in, and we will continue to do, and we will grow on. We're going to be building on that in really substantial ways. Regionally, on the state level, down to the county level. But I will say with greater support from the AHA central staff, we're engaging in copious amounts of training right now, so that we can better support our community, our larger community on the whole. Marty, you have another question?
I just have a comment to support both what Tiff and you are saying, and Sarah, and that is that when I joined the humanist movement many, many years ago, probably before you guys are even finished your education, it seemed as though humanism was trying to identify in a way so that people understood our beliefs and how we differed from the religions that often had stereotyped us as pretty inhumane and unmoral people, particularly if we called ourselves atheists. And what I have liked about First Year Hire, Nadia, and TIF and FBB and a bunch of other movements that are taking over is that I think it's time for us to move past defending our identity as if we're insecure non-believers that have to always make a point of letting you know that I can be good without God and just be good without God. And one of the things, and I know Roy Spreckart, your predecessor, and I had several conversations, and that I said, you know, the funds that you have spent over the years to remove 10 commandments and statutes that were religious from parks, that money needs to be limited now. And we need to put that money towards people that are in real suffering conditions, and not just so that we get to stand at the front of the line like religion has for so many years and say, well, we deserve the same rights you do. Mm-hmm. I would like us to be good and then to claim that it's without God, mm-hmm. and that we actually invite people to be a part of our altruism. Mm-hmm. If that's the direction that humanism is going to take under what Tiff and you are doing, Nadia, and the other organizations, you will have our support here in Canada and our chaplaincy program that I lead, because that's what our service is. It's not to just to declare our belief, but it is to do good.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for that, Marty. I think we can do both. I think we need to do both, because unfortunately, America is really grappling with religion, with religion encroaching on our public policy. And it seems like we're losing ground in some way, fashion, or form. And strangely, simultaneously, as people are walking away from organized religion, the religious right is doubling down. So we actually do need we do need litigation. We do need to find the right cases to support and to litigate. My goal is to raise to the tune of millions of dollars for social justice work, climate justice work, environmental justice work, social justice work, and dole that out to our partners in our sphere, like FBB, like Black Nonbelievers, like SSA, really Student Secular Alliance, y'all. But, the people who are doing really, really great, interesting work, one, raising the next generation of humanists, and helping them find community where they are, serving where they are, and starting to support locally the work that's happening. So I would love for the Orange County chapter to identify, you said that there are 34 cities that you cover. You probably have a very large membership. If there are maybe 5 organizations that are doing really, really great work, but they're under-resourced, Dave, I would love for you to say, hey, I'm going to recommend these 5 organizations to receive funding. And we give them general operating support to the tune of tens of thousands of dollars so that they can organize and do their work without the encumbrance of how are we going to make payroll, or how are we going to fund this program, or, pay the interns or pay the whoever. That's really a very important aspect, Marty, that we have to do both. We can't do one or the other. We don't want to divert from what we're already doing, because we're doing it well, I think, which is why I chose to be here. But I think that we can do better in bulking up the social justice fund, the money that we're using to partner and to serve. I wanted to quickly address, Eddie made another comment here, about intersectionality. And it says intersectionality specifically rejects individual humanity in favor of group identity for political objectives. Crenshaw, 1999. That's why I ask. Kimberly Crenshaw is a Black woman like me. And intersectionality literally is simply saying, take my full humanity into consideration when you look at me. Do not reduce me to just being Black or just being a woman. There are oppressions that we suffer as Black women, as Asian women, as Latinx women, as women from whatever walk of life, but particularly Black women here in this country, that we deal with racism and sexism, classism. We deal with many other isms that other people do not have to deal with. And that is specifically what intersectionality refers to. It doesn't mean movements who intersect at a place working together. That's not what that means. And I'm glad you have a good understanding of that, Eddie. But I have been in spaces, and I'll give you just a quick snippet of my atheist journey. It began by looking into Eastern religions, because they make sense to me. And I still ascribe to certain Buddhist principles. I think the Eightfold Path is a great way to live. Nice roadmap. You can't go wrong with that one. But when I was learning how to navigate my atheism, because I was certain for myself that I did not believe in God, when I got to that place, I was talking with people in a Zen community in particular, because that's what appeals to me most, because it's most austere. It is the place where I thought I would find people with less judgment. And then that is exactly what I did not find. How do I navigate race in the space of atheism, of doing something that's very different? Because in the Black community, religion is extremely important. You cannot begin to imagine how difficult it is. In this country and in the Caribbean, where my family is from, we're probably even more religious in the West Indies than people are here. Navigating that is very, very difficult. And so having to tease apart one thing from the other is impossible. You cannot actually understand that if you don't live it. And that is exactly what Kimberly Crenshaw is talking about, is looking at me as not just a Black person and thinking, the Black struggle is this one thing, or the struggle of women is this one thing. We sit at the intersection of those two things. It is exactly asking you to address individual humanity. Look at my whole struggle. Look at my entire path as an individual. It's not rejecting anything. It is begging and screaming and yelling. Look at me. Understand all the things that I go through. Try your very best to figure it out, and try your best to empathize. And that's really what that means. And I hate it seems like you might have the wrong understanding of that, Eddie, but I'm happy to dialogue about it later on. But I wanted to be sure that I can be clear about that, because I'm sure Sister Kimberly would not, be appreciative of me not explaining that well. But I think you have the wrong take on it. But thank you for asking the question and making the statement. Is anybody looking at the chat? I'm sorry. Can we go over? Are we okay to go over? We're at our time.
I'm okay if everyone else is. Seems to be a lot of questions here.
Questions are good. Where are we? Where were we? Oh, there's a lot of very good conversation here. From Lisa, what would humanist issues be if it's not service and making society better for everyone? Good point, Lisa. Dave, agreed, Marty. Let's take advantage of the wave of people either leaving religion or not accepting it beyond people and focus on solving problems rather than simple identity. I think that's exactly the point. I think, folks, they're smart. The young folks are smart. If we give them the space and we give them the support and a wonderful, loving community, they'll figure it out for themselves. We were all young once. I mean, I stopped being young many years ago, maybe 15, 20 years ago. We figure it out. We get there eventually. I think having wonderful, thoughtful people to bounce ideas off and to kind of work through, how do I tell my family? How do I, where do I find, community? Where can is there secular choir I can sing in? I like singing. What do I do? I think, having a community to bounce those off of could be really helpful. So building our community into a really warm and welcoming place for folks is going to be important.
And I think it's especially important to note that a lot of younger people are coming from Black, Indigenous, and other communities, people of color. And a lot of them are, when you're coming away from religion, it's very much you're coming away from community, you're coming away from family, resources. And so if we can provide them with a way to fill in those gaps, that would be great as well.
Right. Yeah. And agreed. I understand that her paper specifically says it, but again, in the context of how do you address one thing and not the other? Because legally, it was really honestly talking about HR issues in a sense, and again, policy in the broader sense with regard to Kimberly Crenshaw's statement about intersectionality. You can't say that something doesn't affect me because it doesn't apply when you don't know what affects me. And again, it's again looking for policy to address the full identity and the full being of a person. Again, Eddie, I'm happy to chat with you offline if you'd like. It's you can certainly private message me and send me your email, and I'll happily reach out to you and we can get a Zoom together and talk. Thanks for that list, Dave. Oh, goodness. That's comprehensive. Thank you. Are there any more questions or comments or recommendations? I think we're looking to seed ideas too. So if anyone has ideas about how we can strengthen our partnership with FBB, or if you know of organizations that are already doing a lot of relief work in their community and building those supports, please let us know. Again, we don't need to reinvent the wheel if the work is already happening. We would love to hear about other folks that are doing great things and build a partnership with them. And again, get them resourced better. Thank you, Lisa. I appreciate it. Thanks, Jolie.
Hi, Nadia. It has been I'm Claire Woolner talking. Hi. And it's been wonderful listening to you. And I have a lot of hope for where the AHA can go from here. So I'm hearing a lot of talk about partnerships, and just from past experience, partnerships are great, and building them is great, but sometimes it feels like it's collecting to me with some organizations rather than actually being meaningful and doing something with the partnership. I just want to be really cognizant of that and make sure something's actually happening. And
yeah, I appreciate that. Please continue.
Yeah. What's the other point?
I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
No, it's fine. It's fine. It's been a long day, and sometimes, yeah, that's why my camera's not on. I came in from gardening.
Well, I appreciate you making a comment. If you want to think a little bit about what the thought was, because it'll come back at 2:00 in the morning, of course, when you're sleeping. But I am very mindful of collecting partnerships and letting them gather dust, or having them for partnership's sake, let's build out the partner page. I'm not interested in that, and I am also one of the few people that's okay with losing folks, in the sense that if there are people that don't agree with the direction that the AHA is going in the future, and they'd like to separate from us and go elsewhere, they certainly can. But I think in this moment, it matters that we build slow partnerships with our central staff, that some core partnerships, meaning just 5 to 10 very, very close core partnerships that do different things. And the partnerships that I'm really talking about that I think are most meaningful to our members are on the local level, and the local level and the chapters and the members will manage those. That's not for us to do. I think what I'm thinking more about is how can I build my staff, the knowledge base of my staff to better support our chapters and our footprint across the country, including with partners. So what additionals, because we are relatively well resourced as an organization. So if I'm paying for my staff, my 16 staff to get trained, can I bring Tiff and Sarah into a training? If I say I'm paying for a classroom of 35 people, can I invite people in to learn what we're learning? So that they can take that information and train their own communities. So, not just just doing partnerships to, say that we have them, but really enhancing how organizations work and build up their knowledge base so that they can better manage their own work, but including supporting grassroots work at the local level that's managed by local leadership and not us.
Right. Oh, I would love to talk with you offline about many things. That would be great.
Direct message me, send me your email, and we can set up a talk.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right on. Thanks,
Marty. Oh, and thank you, Lisa. Yeah, sometimes the best response needs to be that this might not be the organization you're looking for. And, honestly, I was joking the other day, very lightly, and saying, hey, if you don't want to do work, and you think that we're too woke, I can't stand it when people say that, then maybe you need to go somewhere else. And it's okay. I'm like, there are atheist groups that are there for that. And someone very quickly was like, American atheists are very, very socially active. And I was like, I know. I don't think folks who don't want to do the work are going to find quarter and comfort anywhere. At least not in this community. I don't think. I think there maybe there are partners in our landscape who are about just really driving home free thinking and exploring the psychology and sociology of that. And they want to understand the mechanics and share that out. I think we're going to always need firebrand, loud atheists arguing our non-religious point. But they can do that. And then we can be over here doing something else. It's okay. There's a place for everyone. I like to approach movement work from a place of abundance and not a place of scarcity. There's room for everyone. There's enough for everyone. There's enough food for everyone. There's enough warm cushions, and fires to sit by. There's a lot that we can do, and we shouldn't be looking at this from a scarcity mentality. This is not a zero-sum game as far as how we exist in this world. But in a sense, I think it is in the sense that if we don't do something, if we do not serve now, we're going to lose a whole lot more than a foothold in a ideological landscape. We've already almost nearly 1 million people are dead because of COVID. Nearly 1 million. I remember when it came around, and I was like, we're going to lose 250,000 like that. And people were like, oh my gosh, do you really think so? Absolutely. Absolutely. And sure enough, when we got close to that number, people were like, oh my gosh. And then here we go. We're now bumping up on 1 million just in this country, not even talking about the world impact. We act as if we're an island unto ourselves, and we are not. We are a part of an entire world. Humanism is a worldview. What does that mean? Let us look at the world. We're looking at millions of people dead because of this. So we cannot wait any longer. We're in a place of literally do or die, and we have to do.
And with partnerships, it's important to recognize, like you said, Nadia, there's place for everybody, but sometimes it's not necessarily the right partnership. We have to stay true to our values and put our values into play. And our values are to serve. As humanists, we have a responsibility. We are all interconnected. It doesn't matter who you are, where you are. Every action we take does affect someone, even if in the smallest way possible. There's a lot of chain reactions, like a domino effect. Mm-hmm. And being able to recognize that is very important. We cannot, for the sake of preserving a partnership, stray away from those values. If the partner is not looking to move forward with us in that aspect, that's fine. There's a place for them as well.
Right. Oh, that's a good question, Gretchen. Or was that Gretchen that asked that question? Claire mentioned a lot about things I want to tackle. What's top priority? Honestly, you're going to read about it in staff note on Friday. My first priority is to get our internal house in order. It is like staff salaries. It is benefits. It's staff culture. I like to work a certain way with people. And, I'm not one of those people that believes in like flat organizations, but I absolutely do believe in collaborative work. So one of the things that I'm working on immediately, first and foremost, I already have 5 staff members in training right at this very moment doing organizing, digital organizing training, because we've got to learn how to navigate in a digital world better than we've been doing. If we're going to be organizing with young people and we're going to be working with young folks, we need to have a better handle on how to do that. How do we send out better email campaigns? How do we build social media campaigns? How do we really get people excited about the work that we're doing? We need to have a better handle on that. So got 5 staff members in that training, getting ready to send another swath of folks to fundraising training shortly. But we are going to be doing movement building and coalition building training that FBB will be welcome to. I'll let you know when it happens. But staff culture, building our staff culture is the very first thing, because again, with young folks, you have one time to make, to invite them in. And if they get there and they're like, ooh, I'm the only young person here, and oh, the older folks are descending on me like a piece of cheese, that could be really, really uncomfortable. We need to make sure that when I say young people too, young folks inherently are very diverse, racially, ideologically, disability-wise, taking into accommodation neurodivergency. There's so much diversity. Again, self-actualized young people. We need to create a place where people are welcomed, not feel welcomed, where they are welcomed into our movement. So we've got a little bit of house cleaning to do. And the first house that needs to be cleaned is our internal house, our staff, our internal work culture. And then you'll see that trickle down into, ooh, I hate trickle down. Let's not do that. Ripple outward. We know trickle down doesn't work. An outward ripple to our members and our chapters. So that we can learn more about who's on our team, what are the assets that they have, what talents do they have, what do they want to do, what groups excite them, what kind of work do they want to do, what challenges have they had. We need to learn first. So a lot of work in the first year, honestly, this first year I'm going to be on deck will be a lot of assessment and a lot of learning. We're also doing like a comms assessment to make sure that we have better swag and that our messaging is on point and it's more, catchy, and that we're in the right places and we're using the right tools. So there's a lot that's going on internally. So it's going to be a little quiet. So don't be worried if you don't see or hear anything majorly splashy in the first year that I'm here. Please don't be worried, because it's really, again, we're trying to make sure that we have the accommodations for the audience that we want to welcome into our collective home. And we're not there yet. So we've got a little bit of work to do. I'd love to see the chapters, us again, providing better supports for the chapters, and the chapters getting really, really active, because if folks join and they're like, these are awesome people, they're doing this work, they're going to want to be there. We don't have to entice people. I don't want to do that. That's pervy. It's yucky. It's gross. I want to make sure that we're in a place where we're just doing good work and it shows and people want to be near us. And I think that's very, very easy and very valid. We're wonderful, wonderful people. I think it would be like when I tell people about our current demographic, they're like, ew. And I'm like, no, they're nice people. They're good people. They're really, really good people. They mean well and they want to do well. And we don't have the challenges that other movements have. We don't have to try to sway our existing base. They're already good people. We just need to kind of direct our energy. And again, I welcome all of your ideas and all of your, recommendations. I field emails from regular folks every single day. So email me, please. You may, and I will happily dialogue with you. Thank you for your email, Claire. I appreciate it. Goodness gracious. Eddie, are you saying straight, white, able-bodied males should look elsewhere? That's what you got from this, Eddie? Everyone is welcomed. Everyone is welcome. And I hate that is your perception, that straight, able-bodied white men have had the run of things forever, for nearly ever in the world. You are welcomed. You're absolutely welcome. But again, the space that we want to create is not one where we're navigating and having to negotiate those things. We want to be mindful and welcoming and kind to one another. And if able-bodied straight white men can't be nice, then no. I hope that they can. There are plenty of you all in the room right now, I think, who are probably sliding down in their chairs because you're kind, wonderful people who love everyone. I'm a little disheartened and sad that that's your perception of the conversation.
Eddie, we are trying to create a space where everybody is welcome, like Nadia said, a space where, yes, straight, white, able-bodied male are welcome, but where also Black women, Asian women, Indigenous women, LGBTQIA+, everybody in all their multifaceted identities are able to collaborate, come across differences, and just kind of work that out and work towards a common cause of service and making the world a better place.
And again, Eddie, I will offer, if you would like to talk offline, I'm happy to do that. I'm really just disconcerted with the take, if you are feeling disenfranchised in this moment, like, let's talk about that. Let's have a conversation about that. And if this is, again, not the place that you feel comfortable being, it's okay. I would hope that you would find a place where you're comfortable and you're happy and you're feeling fed. And if we're not doing that in our spaces, it's perfectly fine. You have my love, and my deepest hope that you'll find some place that you enjoy. But I would love to talk with you if you're open to that. I don't need to be, we don't need to have a combative conversation. But I through all of this, we've been talking about inclusivity and diversity in our work, in our constitution, in our thoughts. And if that doesn't sit well with you, then that is a greater challenge that I don't know that I'm trained to address. Thank you, Dave and Lisa. Thanks, Emily. I agree. I think we're lovely folks.
Thank you, everyone. I do want to be mindful of time for about 10 minutes from 8:30. I apologize for my dog barking in the background, by the way.
No, puppy.
Any last questions for Nadia? If there are no other questions, feel free to reach out to Nadia through email, also through the website. Nadia, could you just drop your website into the into the chat? You can also reach out to, if you have questions on FBB. I know this was more focused on HA, which is doing great work. You can also reach out to me as well. Get my email in. I encourage everyone to look more into the work that Nadia is doing to kind of stay updated on everything. And thank you so much again for coming. And thank you, Nadia.